Ladies and gentlemen, fighting in the red corner, standing at a 6'5", weighing under 100 pounds. This man is known as the Eagle of the Mountains and the Lion of Dagestan. Here he is, Shimali. You don't know who that is? Huh. Have I got a story for you today? Shimali was born in 1797 to a religious Muslim family in the village of Gimri in present-day Dagestan. His parents were descendants of Kumyaks. This means within him he has the blood of Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan and Osman Ghazi. Geez, that's what you call a triple threat. When he was born he was given the name Ali, but he was a very sickly boy who suffered from bouts of chronic illness, and so his name was changed to what we know as Shimali, which was a custom of the village in attempts to change his fate. But even so, his illness still led him to be bullied. Nerd! The level of his bullying that was done upon him.
This is a pretty hardcore.
Shimli spent his formative years learning under the guidance of his teacher, Jamaluddin al-Gumchi. But one day a jealous classmate came up to him and straight up said to him, "You are not worth living," and started to beat the shit out of him. Not only that, he shanked him in his chest 2 to 3 times.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
You would think that he would try to go home and try to heal his wounds, but the Shimali, the sickly Shimali, did something peculiar. He ran into the woods and literally did a Baki. And so he came back from his anime training arc and then went back to test himself, and then after asserting his dominance,
and nobody fucks with him.
He did a Samuel Tali and then went to Damascus to finish his studies.
2,000 years later.
Shimal felt a longing to go back home, as his home was invaded by the after the Russian-Turkic War, and Dagestan was annexed into the growing Russian Empire. This led to a major resistance movement during the early life of Shimali. This came in the form of small Islamic states, and our boy Shimali came back home from Damascus to fight for one of these Islamic states. But like the start of every just cause game, Shimali failed so badly of defending his hometown of Gimri that from 60 there were only 2 survivors left, and our boy was one of them. The only way I can think that he escaped was like... But for historical accuracy, there was an account by a Russian soldier during the fight of Gimri. According to the Russian soldier, Shimali stood like a JoJo's character, and so 4 soldiers came towards him asking for his surrender. Shimali did not surrender, but he jumped over them with superhuman strength and swiped his sword and beheaded 3 out of the 4 Russian men. The 4th man stabbed him in the chest multiple times with a bayonet, yet he did not flinch. What he did was he removed the bayonet from his chest and killed the man with his own bayonet. That is hardcore. And with another superhuman leap, disappeared into the darkness. Does this not sound like... But during the escape, unfortunately, one of his wives was killed by a gunshot wound, and he himself received no less than 38 bayonet wounds on his back and his chest. After that dismal defeat, the small Islamic states came together in a meeting likened of the Hayat or Whitebeards of the Turks and elected our boy Shamil as ruler and leader of Dagestan in 1834. And then once elected leader, I presume Shamil said,
Shall we begin?
Shamil then went on to setting up logistical centers with amirs, and within each zone he set up madrasas and schools to educate the populace. This did not go unnoticed by Peter I, and their reaction to Shamil was one of
Das war ein Befehl! Der Angriff Steiners war ein Befehl!
But the rest of the world's reaction was,
Damn, son!
Don't say son.
This led to a scorched earth approach by the Russians, and Shamil counteracted with guerrilla warfare. He used his surroundings to his advantage and would not always face the Russians head on like Rambo. This led to many legends of Shamil's fighting prowess. But I believe one of the legends is enough to illustrate what kind of rumors were being spread. Apparently, one of them are when he goes into battle, he has a gun in his left hand, a sword in another, and he rides his horse with his teeth. If I ever saw something like that, I would be...
It's Godzilla! It looks like Godzilla, but due to international copyright laws, it's not.
During his 25 years of resistance, he led many operations against the Russians with his 5,000 strong Murid army. One thing that we can all say that he was never let anything sway him off his quest for victory. Even though during one of these operations, his own very son Jamil was captured by the Russians and sent to St. Petersburg. In response to his son's capture, he, Shamil, orchestrated one of the greatest clandestine operations of the time ever devised in the 18 and 1900s. This operation would even make SEAL Team 6 proud. The way that the operation went down, that two Murids went on a fact-finding mission and they found out about Princess Anna and her sister, Princess Varvara, who were related to the Tsar. And those two Murids decided to stake out the place for a month and tell Shamil what they found out. I'm feeling a bit of a Mission Impossible vibe. The two Murids picked a night where there were the least amount of guards, and within 2 to 3 minutes they captured both the princesses and slipped into the darkness of the night.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Slowly but surely made their way back to Drago, which was Shimal's base of operations in the heart of the Caucasus Mountains. Once the princesses arrived in Drago, he gave them just one demand, and that is to do a hostage exchange for his beloved son Jamil.
I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
Side note, there was also a French tutor who was with the princesses and wrote a small book about her captivity in the Caucasus Mountains. After spending some time in Drago, they agreed on a date, and on a misty morning on the Caucasus Mountains, the exchange happened. And so Shimali got his son back. But for Shimali, it was a bittersweet experience. Due to the long period of time that he spent with the Russians, it felt like Jamil was a changed man. Alas, this was one of his final exploits, as the Russians were closing on him. The reason for that is the Russians have used a new tactic called deforestation to inch closer and closer to Drago.
I'm too old for this shit.
Shamil knew the jig was up when Peter I sent 70,000 men to the Gurnip Mountains. When the Murids saw this force of 70,000 men, they were all willing to fight for him. But Shimali had to make a decision to fight or not, as he could only hold out the position for maybe a couple of days until all of his sources are depleted. It reminds me of...
I remember the Alamo.
Shimli had no choice, but with a heavy heart he surrendered to the Russians to save his men, and then went on to St. Petersburg to sign a peace treaty with Peter I. Even though his resistance lasted for over a quarter of a century against the Russians, they still treated him with respect and kindness and let him live his final days in Medina, in the Prophet's city. Shimali is a lot of things to many people, but to most in Dagestan, he's a sign of strength and resistance, and is still revered as a hero to many people, like Khabib, the UFC champion, and many others around the world, as a rallying point to never give up on your ideals.